welcome to this week's episode of Lodestar's Lending Leaders Summer Series Between Two Palms. And we're back in our home buyer series with Jim to kind of talk about his personal home buying experience as a mortgage professional. And this week we're going to be talking about all things realtors.
Exciting.
How did you investigate and how did you start to find your realtor? Yeah. And did you know them beforehand?
Yes.
Okay.
Ultimately. Shout out to Mandy, our realtor, and Jim, who's her dad / real estate partner. So we, to be brutally honest, I probably didn't have a great impression of realtors going into this because we don't deal with realtors a ton in what we do. I always kind of question the value of realtors going through the process. And I think if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't get the house that we're going to be in now. Hopefully, we're still a month away from close today, actually. So ultimately, when we had started looking, we were on Zillow. There's a house we were interested in. We didn't even have a pre-qual yet. So I sent a message and heard from a different realtor like 5 seconds later.
Of course.
Talked to a realtor. We never really went too far along there, but we were continuing to be in their CRM, getting emails, getting listings, all of that. However, we had really circled in on the area where we wanted, and a good friend of my wife's is got her real estate license, is starting to get involved, fellow millennial, and then her dad is a home appraiser realtor, and he'd been in that area for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
So it was nice for us because we kind of got the best of both worlds. And I think the things that I ultimately really liked is one, just that kind of like local knowledge of what neighborhoods. Also, they had, when the house that we ended up getting, we went in and we looked at a house before that, that we ended up bidding 50 grand over ask. That was what they recommended if we wanted any sort of serious offer.
Yeah.
And we were, I think, probably number 20 out of 30 offers competitively. That house went for $128,000 above ask with no inspection.
Which is crazy.
Yep. And I knew a lot about a little going through this whole process. When we talk about mortgages, it was going to be a little bit different, but it was definitely very good to ask them things like, when would you consider waiving an inspection? What makes an offer stronger? There are a lot of things that I had no idea about, so it was great for them being a resource. And ultimately, we saw a house that was a little bit over our budget. We drove by it at one day. We're like, oh, let's just drive by it. There's no way we're going to get this place. We found out the price went down to the top of our budget. We didn't want to look. The realtors actually convinced us to look because they thought the sellers were motivated. The realtor, Jim, actually knew the selling realtor too.
Okay.
So that it helped us not only realize the sellers were motivated, but put in an offer below ask that was accepted, and we didn't waive the inspection, which was really good because we found a few things that we had to correct. So ultimately, we were really happy. I think that local knowledge was the thing that I was really happiest about.
Yeah. And I think one thing that you highlighted is the industry is such a relationships-driven business. And I think that's something, especially in a purchase market, that people kind of forget. And it's hard to create those relationships in a purchase-driven market. But it seems like your realtor, knowing another realtor, was part of what ended up getting you the house that you had got.
And it made the communication, I think, really easy. I think one thing that probably frustrated me through the process is after that offer was accepted and now continuingly, it's like a game of telephone because I have to communicate to the buyer's realtor who communicates to the seller's realtor who communicates to the seller. And I get when you have 40 people looking at your house, you don't want all of the buyers contacting the seller, right?
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make sense, but it adds kind of some, steps to the communication process that can be a little bit frustrating. I think that's really the worst thing I have to say about the realtor process.
That makes sense. Because you kind of feel like you lose that ability to negotiate directly when it's something you feel confident in as a person.
Yes and no. In some cases, I think it helps, especially for the seller, like them relying on the realtor doing it, or you're letting the realtor kind of be an advocate for you. So, and that's their job, negotiating those things and having those conversations. So, I think it's helpful to have that buffer in some cases. But when you're going through a process now of like, hey, what stuff does the seller want to give you, or what stuff do they have for sale, like. Or can they take a picture of this and send it to you? Or can we get into the house in this time? Like, it adds a lot of frustration kind of further down.
So. No, that makes total sense.
But also helpful, too, to have local contacts for an electrician, for a home inspector, for HVAC. Things like that, the local value, I think is never going away in this industry. From a realtor perspective, from a mortgage perspective, I don't know. We'll talk about that, but... We'll see.
Awesome. Well, if someone was looking for a realtor, what would you recommend to them as someone who has gone through the process now versus before?
I think you need to know as much about where you want to buy as possible. So I think you really, for us, we knew our hardest criteria was a set few towns that we wanted, particularly due to school districts, which is fairly common for folks looking at a house. So I think having that in mind, of very specific, this is the area where we want, and finding someone who knows that area deeply would be my biggest recommendation. And if you're in the area, please use our realtor in the suburban Philadelphia area, because they were great. So.
Awesome. And we'll link their information in the bio. Or in the description down below if you are interested in the Philadelphia area. But thank you so much, Jim, for telling us about your realtor process. And then next week, I believe we're going to talk briefly about your mortgage.
Yes, we are.
Very exciting stuff in the coming weeks. We are going to space these out over the summer because we do have to get to close, as it says, as it is. But we're really excited to bring you all this series. And if you have any questions for Jim on his home buying experience, please message us and leave a comment. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll see everyone next week.